Add 3/7 plus 2/7. When we add fractions, it is very different from multiplying and dividing fractions. When we add fractions and also subtract fractions, we must have a common denominator before we add or subtract. In our first example, we do have a common denominator. Notice that both denominators of the fractions have a 7. We are talking about something that if we had a whole, we would have 7 pieces. I'm going to illustrate this problem using candy bars, dark chocolate candy bars for that matter. Let's say a candy bar, if we had a whole candy bar, would be 7 pieces. So 3/7 would look like this. We would have 4 of the pieces missing. And 2/7 would look like this, where we would only have 2 pieces left out of our candy bar. Let's say we found 3/7 of a candy bar and 2/7 of a candy bar, and we wanted to know how much of a whole candy bar we had. We would add the pieces that we have. 3 plus 2 is equal to 5. 5 out of 7. So when we add fractions, we need a common denominator because we need to say that the pieces to make a whole are the same. So we add the pieces that we have. 3 plus 2 is 5. And we keep the same denominator, 7. So 3/7 plus 2/7 is 5/7. Now we will add 7/9 plus 4/9. Notice that we already have a common denominator of 9ths. So how many 9ths do we have? We add the numerators. 7 plus 4 is 11. And we keep the denominator, 11/9. This is the answer as an improper fraction. We can write this as a mixed number by putting the numerator inside the fraction sign and dividing by the denominator. 9 goes into 11 one time with 2 left over. 2 is our remainder, so it is our numerator of the fraction part, and the 9 will stay the denominator. So 11/9 is the same thing as 1 and 2/9. This is the answer as an improper fraction, and this is the answer as a mixed number. Add 5/6 plus 1/6. The denominators are the same, so we will add the numerators and keep the denominator. 5 plus 1 is equal to 6, and we keep our denominator of 6. We can simplify this problem. 6 over 6 is equal to 1. So this is like a candy bar that to make a whole, we get 6 pieces. So we found one candy bar that had 5 pieces out of 6, and another candy bar that had 1 piece out of 6. We put those partial candy bars together and we were able to make one whole candy bar. Add 5/6 plus 9/6. The denominators are the same, so we add the numerators. 5 plus 9 is equal to 14, and keep the denominator of 6. We can simplify this, and you always want to check to see if you can simplify your answer. You never leave a fraction that is unsimplified. This is an even number divided by another even number. 14 and 6 are both even, so we know that they are both divisible by 2. So let's divide both the numerator and the denominator by 2. 14 divided by 2 is 7, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. There aren't any other common factors, so this is the answer as an improper fraction. We can change it to a mixed number by putting the top number in the division symbol and the denominator outside. 3 divides 7 twice, with 1 left over. The remainder is our numerator, and what we divided by is our denominator. So 7 over 3 is equal to 2 1/3. This is the answer as an improper fraction, and this is the answer as a mixed number. Add -1/6 plus -2/6. We are going to add the numerators and keep the denominator, but we're going to do this in 2 steps. We're going to add the numerators over the same denominator. Notice we have a -1 plus a -2. The signs are the same, so we add the numbers and we keep the sign. The signs are the same, so we sum the numbers and we keep the same sign. So we have -3. We can divide out a 3 in the numerator and the denominator, so we want to do that next. Divide the numerator by 3 and the denominator by 3, and we get -3 divided by 3 is -1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So our answer can be written as -1 over 2, or you can write it as -1/2. And something that is not necessarily what we might write, but it is still the same answer, would be 1 over -2. The negative can be in the numerator. You could put it out in front of the number that you have, or you can put it in the denominator. Notice there's just one negative in each of the answers. All of these answers are equal and are correct. Add 5 2/7 plus 3 1/7. Here we have mixed numbers. The first method I'm going to show you how to add mixed numbers is to add the whole part and the fraction part. We are going to write this problem vertically. We're going to add our fractions, and then we'll add our whole numbers. Notice we have common denominators for our fractions, so we add our numerators. 2 plus 1 is 3, and keep the denominator. We add our whole numbers. 5 plus 3 is 8. So our answer is 8 3/7. Add 4 4/5 plus 2 3/5. We will do this by writing this problem vertically. We will add the fractions together. Notice we have the same denominator. 4 plus 3 is 7, and we keep the denominator 5. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. I want to draw your attention. This fraction part is actually an improper fraction, and therefore there's a whole number that is inside this fraction. So let's take this over here and take out that whole number by changing this part into a mixed number. 5 goes into 7 one time, with 2 left over. The 2 is the numerator, and the 5 is the denominator. We will now add this to the whole part 6 that we got when we added the whole numbers. 6 plus 1 is 7 2/5. So our final answer is 7 2/5. Add -2 3/4 plus -5 1/4. We have a negative plus a negative. When we add two negatives together, we're going to say that the signs are the same, So we add the absolute values of the numbers and keep the sign. So what we're going to do is we're going to add the fractions together, and then our answer will be negative because we will keep the sign. So let's add our fractions together first. We're adding the absolute values of our mixed numbers. So we'll add our fraction parts together first, 3/4 plus 1/4. The denominators are the same, so we add the numerators. 3 plus 1 is 4, and keep the denominator. 2 plus 5 is 7. What is 4 over 4 equal to? 4 over 4 is equal to 1, with nothing left over. So 4 over 4 is equal to 1. So 7 plus 1, which is 8. So we added the absolute values of these numbers and got the number 8. Then we need to keep the sign the same, following our rules for adding. So our answer is -8. Now we will add these numbers using a different method. We'll call this method 2. In method 2, what we do is we change the mixed numbers to improper fractions. We add the numerators, keep the same denominator, and then we change it back to a mixed number. So let's change our mixed numbers into improper fractions and add them. 5 times 7 is 35. 35 plus 2 is 37. And keep the denominator. Change this mixed number to an improper fraction. 3 times 7 is 21, plus 1 is 22 over 7. Now we will add our numerators together. 37 plus 22 is equal to 59, and we keep our same denominator. This is the answer as an improper fraction. To change to a mixed number, we put the numerator inside the division symbol and divide by 7. 7 divides 59 8 times. 8 times 7 is 56. We subtract and get 3. Our numerator is 3 and our denominator is 7. So this is the same as 8 and 3/7. So 59/7 is the same thing as 8 and 3/7. Add 4 and 4/5 plus 2 and 3/5 using method 2. For method 2, we're going to change the mixed numbers to improper fractions and then add. So we'll change this to an improper fraction. The whole number 4 times the denominator 5 is 20, plus the numerator gives me 24, and keep the same denominator 5. Change this to an improper fraction. The whole number 2 times the denominator 5 is 10, plus 3 gives me 13 for my numerator, and 5 for my denominator. Now we will add the numerators together. 24 plus 13 is equal to 37, and the denominator stays the same. This is the answer as an improper fraction. We can change it to a mixed number by putting the numerator inside the division symbol and the denominator outside. 5 divides 37 7 times. When we subtract, we get 2. So 7 and 2/5 is equal to 37/5. So this is our answer as a mixed number, and this is our answer as an improper fraction. Add -2 and 3/4 plus -5 and 1/4 using method 2, which means we're going to change the mixed numbers into improper fractions first, and then add the fractions together. So let's change this to a mixed number. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 3 is 11 over 4. And 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21 over 4. Now we will do this in another step, putting the numerators together, negative 11 plus negative 21 all over 4. Negative 11 plus negative 21. The signs are the same, so we will add the numbers and keep the sign. 11 plus 21 is 32, and we will keep the sign negative. 32 divided by 4, we can divide both these by 4. Negative 32 divided by 4 is equal to negative 8, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. So anything divided by 1 is itself, so our answer is negative 8. Add 5/8 plus 6. We will write this vertically, 5/8 plus 6. Notice I put the fraction part here and the whole number part here. We're adding a fraction to 0 and we get 5/8. We're adding nothing to 6 and we get 6. So 5/8 plus 6 is equal to 6 and 5/8. I want you to understand that the number 6 and 5/8 means this: 6 plus 5/8. This is not multiplication going on here. This is addition. We have 6 whole things and 5/8 of something. So when you see a mixed number, always understand that there's a plus sign in between the whole number and the fraction part. So we could right away see that if we added 6 and 5/8, we would get 6 and 5/8. 3 plus 2 and 1/3. We'll set this up vertically. 3 plus 2 and 1/3. We don't have anything to add to the fraction part, and we add our whole numbers together and get 5. So 3 plus 2 and 1/3 is equal to 5 and 1/3. Least common denominators. We're going to learn 2 methods for finding least common denominators. We'll start with method 1. Least common denominators. The least common denominator, or LCD, is the least common multiple of the denominators. Recall we've learned that the least common multiple of 2 numbers is the smallest number that both numbers divide evenly. One way to determine the least common multiple, or the least common denominator of the 2 denominators, is to multiply the 2 numbers together and then divide that product by the greatest common factor. We have used this formula in previous problems. Determine the least common denominator of these 2 fractions. We will use this formula. We are going to find the least common multiple of 3 and 2. We multiply 3 times 2 and then divide by the greatest common factor of 3 and 2. The greatest common factor of 3 and 2 is 1. The only number that divides 3 and 2 is the number 1. So 3 times 2 divided by 1 is going to give us our LCM of our denominators, which will give us the least common denominator. 3 times 2 is 6, and divide that by 1 and we get 6. So the least common denominator of 1/3 and 1/2 is 6. Determine the least common denominator in order to add. We need to find the least common multiple of 5 and 10. The least common multiple of 5 and 10, we will use this formula. We will multiply 5 times 10 and divide by the greatest common factor of 5 and 10. What number divides 5 and 10? What is the greatest common factor? The number 5 divides both 5 and 10, so our greatest common factor is 5. So we will multiply 5 times 10 and divide by 5. 5 times 10 is 50, divided by 5, and we get 10. So our least common denominator is 10. Determine the least common denominator in order to add these fractions. 9 and 12. 9 and 12 are our denominators, so we need to find the least common multiple of our denominators. We will use this formula. The LCM of 9 and 12 is equal to 9 times 12 divided by the GCF of 9 and 12. To determine the GCF, the greatest common factor of 9 and 12, we ask, what divides both 9 and 12? 3 divides 9 and 12. 3 is the greatest number that divides both of them. So our greatest common factor is equal to 3. So 9 times 12 is equal to 108. And then we divide 108 by 3, and we get 36. So our least common denominator is 36. Least common denominators method 2. Another way to find the least common denominator is to take the larger denominator and look at its multiples, multiplying it by 1, 2, 3, and so on, until one of the answers is divisible by the other denominator with no remainder. Let's go back to finding the least common denominator of 1/3 and 1/2. Our larger denominator is 3, so we will write our multiples of 3. One times 3 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9, and so forth. Notice the first number that's divisible by 2 in our list of multiples is the number 6. So 6 is the first number that both 3 and 2 divide. So 6 is the least common denominator. Determine the least common denominator. We will use method 2. The larger denominator is 10, so we will write our multiples of 10. 1 times 10 is equal to 10. 2 times 10 is equal to 20. And so forth. But we can stop because we see something that's divisible by the other denominator. 10 is divisible by 5. So 10 is the first number that is in the list of multiples that both 5 and 10 divide evenly. So 10 is our least common denominator. Determine the least common denominator using method 2. The number 12 is our bigger denominator, so we will write our multiples of 12. 1 times 12 is equal to 12. 2 times 12 is equal to 24. 3 times 12 is equal to 36. 4 times 12 is equal to 48, and so forth. Does 9 divide 12? No. Does 9 divide 24? No. Does 9 divide 36? Yes. This is the first number that 9 and 12 divide that is in the list of the multiples of 12. So 36 is the least common denominator of 9 and 12. 1/3 plus 1/2. We are going to look at this with a picture so that we understand adding fractions that don't have a common denominator. Notice our denominators have all been the same with all of the problems we have been doing thus far in this section. Now we are going to tackle some problems that have different denominators. What does 1/3 look like? 1/3 says we have one piece out of 3 that make a whole. What does 1/2 mean? 1/2 means that we have half of the whole, or one piece out of 2. These pieces here in the 1/3 aren't the same size as 1/2, so we aren't able to add these pieces and say there's 2 pieces because the pieces are different sizes. So the idea here is that when we have a common denominator, we know the pieces are the same size. So what we need to do is we need to write or draw 1/3 differently and 1/2 differently, making the pieces the same size. We could do this to the 1/3 picture. We could break it up into 6 parts and say that we have 2 of them. Do you see how 2 pieces out of 6 is the same amount as 1 piece out of 3? We can do the same thing with 1/2. Can you see that 3 pieces out of 6 is the same amount as 1 piece out of 2? We can rewrite this problem now as 2/6 plus 3/6. We have a common denominator now, and when we add those pieces together we get 5 out of 6. So we get our answer as 5/6. We are going to learn some methods for doing this that don't require drawing pictures as we move through this section. Add 1/3 plus 1/2. We want to have the denominators to be the same before we add. In a previous problem we have determined that the common denominator for both of these fractions is 6. So we write that in the denominators of both fractions. Then we ask ourselves, what number did we multiply 3 by in order to get 6? We multiplied by 2. So we need to multiply the numerator by 2 as well. Our new numerator is 2. What did we multiply this 2 by in order to get the denominator 6? We multiplied this 2 by 3. So we need to multiply this numerator by 3. 1 times 3 is 3. That is our new numerator. Now we have fractions that have the same denominator. We add the numerators. 2 plus 3 is 5, and our denominator stays the same. This is the same answer we got when we did this problem with pictures. Add 3/5 plus 1/10. We first need to find a common denominator, which we have done in a previous problem. The common denominator is 10. So we will write that in the denominator of both fractions. Then we will ask what we multiplied the denominator of this fraction in order to get the denominator of our common denominator. 5 times what is equal to 10? 5 times 2. So if I multiplied the denominator by 2, I need to multiply the numerator by 2 in order to keep it an equivalent fraction. Our new numerator is 3 times 2, which is 6. This denominator, 10, is the same. It did not change. So we do not need to multiply the numerator by anything. Now we have two fractions with the same denominator. Now we will add the numerators. 6 plus 1 is 7, and the denominator will stay the same. 6 tenths plus 1 tenth is equal to 7 tenths. Add 5 ninths plus 11 twelfths. 5 ninths plus 11 twelfths. We need to find a common denominator, which we've done in a previous problem. The common denominator of 9 and 12 is equal to 36. We will put the denominator of 36 in both of the fractions. Then we will ask ourselves, what do we multiply this denominator in order to get the common denominator? 9 times what gives me 36? 9 times 4. So we multiplied the denominator by 4, so we need to multiply the numerator by 4. 5 times 4 is 20. What did we multiply 12 by to get the common denominator 36? We multiplied by 3. So we multiplied the denominator by 3, so we need to multiply the numerator by 3. 11 times 3 is 33. Now we have a common denominator in both fractions, so we add the numerators. 20 plus 33 is equal to 53. And we keep the same denominator, 36. This is the answer as an improper fraction, but we can change it to a mixed number by putting the numerator under the division symbol and divide by the denominator. 36 divides 53 one time. We subtract, and we get 17 as a remainder. The 17 is then the numerator of our fraction part, and our denominator stays 36. So we could also write this as 1 and 17 36ths. Add 1/6 plus 5 ninths. We need to find a common denominator. We can do this by listing the multiples of the larger denominator. The multiples of 9 are 9 times 1, which is 9, 9 times 2, which is 18, and 18 is the first multiple that is divisible by 6. So 18 is our least common multiple. So that is our least common denominator. So we need to write these fractions with a denominator of 18. We will write the fractions with an 18 in the denominator. Then we will ask, what did we multiply the 6 by in order to get 18? We multiplied by 3. Therefore, we need to multiply this numerator by 3 as well in order to keep this an equivalent fraction. 1 times 3 is 3. What did we multiply 9 by in order to get 18? We multiplied by 2. So therefore we need to multiply the numerator by 2 in order to keep this an equivalent fraction. 5 times 2 is 10. Now we will add the numerators. 3 plus 10 is 13, and keep the denominator. Add 3 1/5 plus 5 1/6. We're going to do this method 1, meaning we're going to line up the problem vertically. We'll add the whole number parts together and the fraction parts together. When we go to add the fraction parts, we see that we do not have a common denominator. So we need to determine the least common multiple of 5 and 6. We could do this one of two ways. We could pick the 6 as the largest denominator and write the multiples of 6. Six times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. And we see that 30 is the first number that the other denominator will divide. So 30 is the least common multiple of 5 and 6. So we want to write these fractions with 30 as the denominator. So we ask ourselves, what did we multiply 5 by in order to get 30? We multiplied by 6. So we need to multiply the numerator by 6 as well. What did we multiply this denominator by to get 30? 6 times 5 is 30. So whatever we do to the denominator, we also have to do to the numerator. 1 times 5 is 5. And we'll write the rest of the problem down. We've rewritten this problem. It's the same problem. The only thing that is different is now we have a common denominator. Now we will add the numerators. 6 plus 5 is equal to 11. And the denominator stays the same. 3 plus 5 is equal to 8. So our answer is 8 and 11/30. Add 3 and 1/5 plus 5 and 1/6 using method 2. For method 2, we're going to change the mixed numbers into improper fractions and then add. So let's change this into an improper fraction. The whole number 3 times the denominator 5. 3 times 5 is 15, plus the numerator is 16. So our numerator is 16 and our denominator stays the same. Change this mixed number into an improper fraction. Whole number times the denominator plus the numerator. 5 times 6 is 30, plus 1 is 31. We need to find a common denominator. We can do that many ways. We did it in the previous problem, listing the multiples of the larger denominator. We could also use the formula for the least common multiple of the denominators. You multiply the numbers together and divide by the greatest common factor of the two numbers. And the greatest common factor of 5 and 6 is 1. 1 is the only number that divides both of them. So when we multiply 5 times 6, we get 30, and then divide by 1, and we get 30. So our least common denominator is 30. So we ask ourselves, what did we multiply 5 by in order to get 30? 5 times 6 is equal to 30. So we need to multiply the numerator by 6. 16 times 6 is equal to 96. 6 times what equals 30? 6 times 5. So then we need to multiply the numerator also by 5. 31 times 5 is equal to 155. Now we have a common denominator, and now we can add the numerators. 96 plus 155 is equal to 251, keeping the same denominator. This is the answer as an improper fraction. We can change it to a mixed number by putting the numerator in under the division symbol and divide by the denominator. 30 divides 251 8 times. 8 times 30 is equal to 240. When we subtract, we get 11. 11 is our remainder, so it is our numerator of our fraction part, and 30 is our denominator. So 8 and 11/30 is this as a mixed number. Determine the perimeter of the triangle below. Remember, perimeter is the sum of the lengths of all the sides of an object. So what we need to do is we need to add all of the sides together. I will write this vertically, lining up the fraction part and the whole number part. We see that the denominators are all the same, so we can just add the numerators. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 1 is 4. Over 3, keeping the same denominator, and add our whole numbers. 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6. I want to draw our attention to this fraction part. What do you notice? We have a bigger number in the numerator than the denominator. So there's actually a whole number inside this improper fraction that we need to get out and put with our whole number. So we'll put our top number inside the division sign and change this into a mixed number. When we subtract, we get 1. So our numerator is our remainder and our denominator is what we divided by. So 4/3 is equal to 1 1/3. So now we need to add this whole number to the 6. So 6 plus 1 is equal to 7 and 1/3. So our answer is 7 and 1/3. Determine the median of the following data set. To determine the median, we need to put the numbers in order from least to greatest. When dealing with fractions, we would need to have a common denominator in order to order the fractions. In this problem, the denominators are all 11, so we need to only look at the numerators in order to put these in order. The smallest numerator is the smallest number, because all of the numbers have the same denominator. So as I put them in order, I will cross them off to keep track of what I've already used. The median is the middle number. We have an even number of numbers, so we actually have 2 numbers in the middle. So in order to find the median, we need to add the 2 middle numbers and then divide by 2. So we will add 5/11 plus 6/11. And we get 5 plus 6 is 11 over 11. What is 11 over 11? 11 over 11 is 1. So the sum of these numbers is 1. To find the median, we need to take the sum and divide it by 2. We can also write 1 divided by 2 as a fraction. 1 divided by 2, or 1/2. So the median of this set of data is equal to 1/2. Determine the mean of the following data. To determine the mean, you need to add all of the numbers together and then divide by the number of numbers. So we will add these fractions together, then we will divide by 3 because we have 3 numbers. So we need to sum all of the numbers, And in order to add fractions, we need to have a common denominator. We have 3 and 6 in our denominators. We need to determine what the least common multiple of 3 and 6 is. We can pick the largest denominator and write the multiples of 6. Multiples of 6 are 1 times 6, which is 6, 2 times 6, which is 12, and so forth. But right away we see a number that's divisible by the other denominator. 6 is divisible by 3, and 6 is divisible by 6. So our least common multiple, our least common denominator, is 6. So we will write 6's in the denominators of all of the numbers. We ask ourselves, what did we multiply 3 by in order to get 6? We multiplied by 2, so we need to multiply the numerator by 2. 1 times 2 is 2. We didn't change this fraction at all, so its denominator, so we don't change the fraction at all. We didn't change this denominator, so we don't need to change the fraction at all. Next, we will add the numerators. 2 plus 5 is 7, plus 1 is 8 over 6. 8 over 6. Now we need to simplify. We see two even numbers, so we need to divide out a common factor. Even numbers we know are divisible by 2, so we will divide the numerator and denominator by 2. So the sum of all of the numbers is equal to 4 over 3. So we have added all of the numbers and we have this sum of 4/3. The final step of finding the mean is then to divide by the number of numbers. So to find the mean, we're going to take the sum and divide it by the number of numbers. And in this case, our number of numbers is 3. Our sum is 4/3, so we're going to divide by 3. So what does this mean? This problem is 4/3 divided by 3 over 1. Now we need to follow our rules for division. We're going to keep the first fraction the same. We're going to change the operation to multiplication, and we're going to flip or take the reciprocal of the divisor or second fraction. Now we follow our rules for multiplying. We're going to multiply the numerators together and get 4, and our denominators together and get 9. So the mean of these numbers is 4/9. So let's review how to determine the mean. First, we added the numbers together. That's what we did here. Add. And we went through and we simplified that as much as possible. Then we took that sum and we divided it by the number of numbers, which was 3. We had to change the division to multiplication and follow the rules for multiplying fractions. So the mean is 4/9.